What happens when you let a naturalist and photographer wander around in the dark of the jungle for hours on end? Well, you come away with a bunch of photos. But these trips are more than just a collection of photos. They're also stories. Stories of us and stories of the animals we found. I'm gonna start with a shake and bake. This is a team effort of how you get a sleeping lizard off a branch.
Recording.
Okay. All right.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Shake and bake. Shake and bake. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Once more in slow motion, Steve's gonna knock off the lizard. It's gonna fall right into Eric's hands. This was my first herping trip, and we decided to go to Panama to a place called El Cope. And this is the field station. It's nestled in the cloud rainforest. This is also a trail where we were herping almost every night. I had never gone herping in the jungle at night. I had never looked for sleeping lizards. Now, I thought it was going to be relatively easy, and I was in for a big surprise. We started the night out where everybody kind of made a wish of what we were going to see, and then we headed off to the trails where we started looking for lizards and any other herp we could find. This is Anolis frenatus. We were taking a break when Steve Poe saw that individual sleeping on the branch right next to us. It turns out there are still lizards to be discovered. This one is Anolis cuniale, and Steve Poe and his graduate student Eric Hulaback, they described this one about 10 years ago. Perhaps the most common lizard on the trail was Anolis limifrons, and in fact, I found one in the first 5 minutes of herping, and I thought to myself, this was gonna be easy. But it turns out that 6 hours later, I had only found one other lizard. I discovered that finding sleeping lizards on a branch, way up in the trees, or even close by, in the middle of the jungle, is very difficult. We also found other things besides anoles, like this Cordophanius cristatus. That's one of my favorite lizards. We also found Ineoloides and this Echinosaura as well. Now, there were also snakes, including this Bothrops asper, commonly known as a fertile lance. And I managed to get some pretty close-up photos of this guy. As you can see, it wasn't very big. There's my Florida State hat. I threw right next to it for good measure. And of course, you can see Teresa pointing at this tiny little guy. They do get a lot bigger than this. I also learned about a lot of new snakes, like this Dipsis temporalis. A lot of these snakes are active at night, and they'll eat sleeping lizards, and some of them are even snail specialists. You can tell these guys are active at night. Check out those big eyes. This is a vine snake. There's a couple different types. This is Oxybillus aeneas. We also saw Breva rostris, which is bright green. Some of these photos were not staged like this one, and others were because, quite frankly, I wasn't very good at finding herps. So this picture of the Cybon nebulatus, that's a totally staged photo because somebody else found it. Almost every night, we would herp from sundown to sun up. That's almost 12 hours in the tropics. So you had to take a break. So here's Steve and Ian, and then the rest of us sitting around taking a break in the middle of the jungle, probably around midnight, having a snack or a tasty beverage. Then after about 30 minutes, we would get back to herping. Now it turns out that I was actually a little bit better at finding amphibians, like this glass frog, than I was finding sleeping lizards. Also in this area, there were a lot of salamanders, like Boletta glossa was the most common genus found, and I think we only got one species. One of my favorite amphibians were the glass frogs. I didn't know much about them, and we did find several different species, typically near the streams. They do something really interesting. They will lay their eggs on the leaves, and then during the rainy seasons, the eggs will hatch a little bit, and then the tadpoles will wash down into the streams, and the tadpoles will then bury themselves into the substrate of the stream. And we also found tree frogs. This toad was actually calling in a puddle right out in front of the field station. You can see how well they blend in with the leaf litter. I thought that there were a lot of frogs and other amphibians along this trail behind El Cope. It turns out that the chytrid fungus had actually gone through this valley about a year and a half before we got there. And at one point, there was up to almost 90 different species of frogs before this chytrid fungus came through. And when we were there, we discovered a little over 20 different species. Like I said, for me coming from North America, that's a lot. Now this is Rhinella marina. That is a cane toad. This is another type of frog, and all of these have survived that chytrid fungus coming through. Here we are again, taking another break. Like I said, you have to do it. So you take a cold beer, or a Slim Jim with 5 grams of pure flavor. But one of my most favorite memories was drinking a warm beer in the middle of the jungle at 2 o'clock in the morning in the pouring down rain with one of my best friends. You know life is good. When a photographer starts wandering around in the jungle at night, they start taking pictures of everything, like leafcutter ants, insects that I didn't even know what they were. I'd never seen anything like that before. Or assassin bugs. They were quite common. Lots of insects were out all the time. Things that you would never see during the day were very common at night, especially walking sticks. I had never known there were so many different types of walking sticks. And yes, I also corrupted these herpetologists to look at birds. Now, Trees already liked birds. Ian, he's a birder at heart. Actually, he's a really good naturalist. He likes a little bit of everything. Steve Poe actually caught this bird and handed it to me and said, "Do you know the word? The word is the bird." This is another spectacled antpeter that I found out looking for lizards. And this is a manakin sleeping underneath a leaf. And there were other birds we saw, like this toucan. It was kind of cool. I'd never really seen one before in Panama, so that was a good bird. And of course, here we are just kind of goofing around near the end of the trip. And then it was time for us to go, and there's me and Ian Latella at the airport. If you like these photos and want to know more about the natural history of everything we saw and some of the really fun stories we had, then look for my book, Wandering in the Dark, coming out in the fall of 2018.